Hello and welcome to Sir Astro's Painting. In this video I'll be painting Darth Vader from the new Galactic Empire starter set for the Star Wars Legion miniatures game by Atomic Mass Games. And for ideas on how to paint the Stormtroopers and Scout Troopers that also come in the box, you can find a link in the video description. Let's begin. After assembling the model, we can go ahead and prime the figure in black, and I'm using the airbrush for this. I also chose to save some time by airbrushing the cloak, firstly using the Pro Aqua Coal Black to give it a nice matte finish, and I'm thinning this with water mixed with a little flow enhancer. We can then provide some gentle highlights to the fabric, and I'm using a mix of dark neutral grey and blue-black for this. You can see I'm applying this from a roughly overhead angle to achieve some nice smooth zenith style highlights in a couple of layers. You could of course apply these highlights with a regular brush if you don't have an airbrush. It would just take a fair bit longer to achieve the kind of gentle transitions that we're looking for. I'm now just providing a spray of ultra matte varnish for protection, and I chose to give the blade of the lightsaber an undercoat of pure white, taking care to mask the surrounding area. This takes care of the robes and the cloak. Next I'm providing some basing to match the rest of the army, using Vallejo's brown earth basing paste, followed with some additional debris, a sprinkling of cork rocks and some modelling sand. You may of course go for a different theme here depending on the surface or setting you'll be playing on. To paint the various sections of armour and leather, I'll mainly be using black mixed with a little dark blue for some added depth and colour interest, lightened up with some bold titanium white for the highlights. I'm first using the blue-black mix to bring the depth back down for the outfit, taking care to avoid the areas of fabric. I'm now lightening the tone with increasing amounts of white and beginning to place my highlights. I'm starting with the armoured boots, where I'm initially picking out most of the edges and any other obvious points that might catch the light. These boots, along with the chest and helmet, form the shiniest parts of the outfit, which means we want to push the highlights up to virtually pure white. The key to maintaining the impression that the armour is still black is to keep the highlights tightly focused, with broader areas of black and dark grey leading to a sharp increase in values at the highlights. Bear in mind that I'm working under a very bright studio lamp here, and these highlights will appear more dull on the gaming table. That being said, we can of course go in with some black to push some of these highlights back a little later on if need be. I'm now progressing up to the leather parts of the outfit. Whilst the leather is certainly more reflective than the cloak, it's not as shiny as the armoured sections, so we only want to highlight up to a mid-grey tone here. The leather is also somewhat wrinkled, so feel free to add a little texture as you go. Here on the belt there's a mixture of leather, metal and some small lights. For these little panels, I'm first just overbrushing quite a dark grey. We can then use white to pick out the lights. These might be tricky to get neat first time, so some corrections with the black might be necessary. I'm now picking out the various details on the chest panel. and we can once again tidy things up with the black as we work. We can then paint the little lights with whatever your favourite fluorescent tones might be, and I'm using fluorescent pigments by Hera models. I'm now finishing off the rest of the leather along with the handle of the lightsaber. The upper chest area features alternating strips of gunmetal silver in between the gloss black, which I'm now going to paint using dark warm grey. I'm now highlighting these up with some warm grey and some white, creating some slightly irregular non-metallic metal style highlights. And we can highlight the rest with the more bluish black gradient. I'm now picking out the chain before moving up to the face mask. I went back and forth a little, adding a couple of reflective glints to the eye area. Moving on to the helmet, I'm aiming to imagine the kind of reflections we might see when Vader's in an outdoor daylit environment. So I'm now freely mapping out a large highlight on the top of the helmet, along with various smaller highlights elsewhere, and you could keep things as minimal or go as crazy as you like here. I'm now placing some brighter tones within these highlights. I also toyed with introducing some of the warmer grey tones to suggest reflections of both land and sky. And we can go brighter still. We can of course return to the black as needed. I'm now mixing some thinned intermediate tones to soften out some of the transitions, whilst I'm happy to leave others with a sharper edge. And here I decided to push the vibrancy a little with some thinned turquoise and sky blue. If I was painting Vader inside a space station, I probably wouldn't go quite so blue here, and I'd also favour a larger number of smaller specular reflections. I'm now just playing around, adjusting the pattern of light and shade, and freely adding additional highlights here or there to ensure the helmet looks good from a range of angles. I'm also tweaking one or two highlights elsewhere on the armour. To maximise the contrast, I'm pushing the highlights on the top all the way up to pure white. And elsewhere I'm ensuring there's adequate presence of black. I'm now shading the base down with a thinned black-brown wash before adding a light dry brush to bring out the texture. We can then paint the blade of the lightsaber by mixing some red into white. Here I chose to preserve a white strip on both the front and back of the blade, giving the impression of a reddish glow when viewed from either main angle. This is as deep as I chose to take the red. In a daylight setting, we wouldn't expect much, if any, red glow to show on the outfit, but I'm adding a few subtle touches anyway by mixing some red into the grey or black. For the robes nearest the blade, I'm providing a thin glaze of red mixed into some black. I'm then running a damp brush along the border to soften out or feather the transition. I'm now continuing to place some additional small touches of reddish reflections, whilst also making some final adjustments to the blade. I'm now toning some of the highlights back down with some black or grey. And I decided to change the band of this Rebel Trooper helmet to green. Once we're happy, we can then paint the rim of the base in black before providing a final spray of ultra matte varnish. And this completes Darth Vader. Thank you so much for joining me. As usual, you'll find a full product list in the video description, along with links to my various social media accounts as well as the main music platforms. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Star Wars Legion. Happy painting!